How grandparents arranged beds to make the coldest nights bearable. Long before central heating, families found ways to make their bedrooms warm and livable, even during the harshest winters. Grandparents weren't just lucky, they were strategic. They knew how to work with the house itself, the behavior of heat, and the natural insulation that old homes offered. Every choice, from where the bed went to how it was dressed, was intentional. Understanding these methods can give modern viewers insight into practical solutions that still have relevance today, whether you're restoring an old home, living off-grid, or just curious about the ingenuity of past generations. They placed beds near heat sources, but not too close. One of the most consistent practices was positioning beds near the room's heat source. In homes with wood stoves or fireplaces, beds were often placed within the radius of radiant heat, allowing warmth to reach the sleeping area without making it unbearable or creating fire hazards. Well, grandparents understood that heat rises, so they frequently avoided putting beds directly under beams where hot air could escape too quickly. In modern application, you can replicate this by placing your bed near a radiator or a pellet stove while keeping a safe distance to prevent burns. Even today, off-grid homes use similar principles with small wood stoves to heat only living spaces and sleeping areas efficiently. They avoided drafts and cold walls. Bedrooms in older homes often had thin walls, single-pane windows, or gaps that let cold air in. Now, the simplest trick was to keep beds away from exterior walls and windows. By placing the bed along interior walls, folks minimized their exposure to cold surfaces and, well, they managed to retain a bit more warmth throughout the night. If you happen to live in a drafty home these days, you might want to consider the same approach. Move your beds to interior walls, or maybe create an insulated barrier using thick quilts, tapestries, or even fitted panels behind the headboard to block out that cold air. They also grouped beds together to share warmth. In larger households, another clever strategy was placing beds close together in one corner of the room, just to make sure everyone stayed a little bit cozier. This arrangement allowed body heat from multiple family members to circulate, creating a microclimate of warmth that lasted through the night. Today, this principle can be applied in cabins or dorm-style sleeping arrangements. Clustering beds or sleeping cots in a single warm corner and using layered bedding helps conserve heat without relying on electricity. They used thermal barriers beneath and around beds. Grandparents didn't rely solely on blankets. They often elevated beds or placed thick rugs, straw, or even quilts underneath mattresses. This extra layer acted as insulation, preventing cold from rising through floorboards. Some homes even had bed risers made from wood or bricks to create an air gap that trapped warmer air beneath the sleeping surface. For modern use, consider adding thick rugs, foam pads, or even insulating underlays under beds in colder rooms. It's a simple, low-cost way to retain heat all night. They positioned beds to take advantage of sunlight. Morning sun wasn't just for waking up, it was part of the heating strategy. Whenever possible, beds were placed where sunlight would reach them during the day, naturally warming the bed linens and the mattress. Even back in the early 20th century, folks understood the value of solar gain. You can still use this idea today by putting your bed near windows that get direct sunlight or by hanging up thermal curtains to trap in the heat after the sun goes down. Now, to hold on to that warmth a bit better, our grandparents would often use bed canopies or drape quilts around the bed, sometimes even build in simple wooden frames to make a sort of cocoon. This little enclosure kept the heat from slipping away and helped block out any drafts. In homes with more than one bed, especially where kids and parents shared a room, beds might be set at different heights. The lower beds stayed a bit cooler, while the upper ones caught more of the rising heat. Just a clever way to make the most of what you had, really. While parents often took the higher beds, leaving lower beds for children who could tolerate slightly cooler temperatures. Nowadays, bunk beds or lofted beds naturally replicate this heat layering, making it an enduringly practical method for maximizing warmth in shared bedrooms. Beyond placement, the type of bedding mattered just as much as location. Grandparents would layer blankets, quilts, and even animal hides in a strategic order, starting with heavier wool blankets nearest the sleeper and lighter ones on top. They sure used walls and furniture to shield beds from the cold. Beds were often placed against large, solid furniture like wardrobes or dressers. These acted as heat shields, reducing drafts and trapping warmth near the bed. Even today, positioning furniture strategically around a bed can improve room insulation. They rotated bed placement seasonally. Grandparents adjusted bed locations with the seasons. During the winter, beds were pushed to the warmest corners or against the most insulated walls. In the summer, they were moved for airflow and ventilation. This seasonal rotation was a practical response to the natural fluctuations in room temperature, showing an intuitive understanding of microclimates within a home. Well, nowadays, folks can use this old knowledge to plan more flexible sleeping arrangements that help keep everyone comfortable all year round, especially if your home doesn't have central heating or air conditioning. It's a simple idea, but it sure does make a difference. Back then, they took advantage of body heat in shared sleeping. In homes where several generations lived under one roof, grandparents sure understood the warmth you could get from sharing a room. Adults and children would sleep close together, letting their combined body heat keep everyone warm through the night. This idea still holds true today for families using temporary shelters, cabins, or even when you're out in the wild in a survival situation. Sleeping close together really cuts down on the need for extra heating, while keeping everybody comfortable as can be. Now, how do we apply these historical methods today? Well, by studying these strategies, modern viewers can, replicate practical historical solutions in their own lives. Now, here's a handful of practical tips you can use today. Place your beds near heat sources, but be careful not to put them right up against the heat. Keep a little distance. Shield your sleeping areas from drafts with furniture or rugs, and use layered bedding in a smart way. Take advantage of any sunlight you get. Cluster beds together to hold in warmth, and if you can, do a little seasonal rotation to keep things comfortable as the weather changes. Even the smallest changes, like say, elevating your bed, setting up a simple canopy, or tucking your blankets under the mattress, can really turn a cold bedroom into a cozy spot, and you don't have to lean too hard on electricity to do it. Grandparent bed placement hacks, well, they were a real mix of observation, ingenuity, and good old practicality. These strategies didn't need any money or fancy technology, just a solid understanding of heat, drafts, and what makes folks comfortable. So, whether you're fixing up an old house living off the grid, or just want to appreciate some good historical wisdom, these methods still offer lessons that are both useful and timeless. If you found this guide helpful, go ahead and subscribe to Wisdom for the Journey for more practical historical insights and share it with your fellow history lovers. The knowledge of the past, well, it sure can still change the way we live today.